We will be beginning in a minute or two. Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome all of you. MyBroadHub.com is proud to present today's webinar. At this point, you should be seeing the Microsoft SQL Server 2005 screen, and you should be able to listen to my audio. If not, please make sure that you dial into the number that we sent you out in the email. Quick overview of the orientation of the webinar screen. On your desktop, on the top right-hand screen, you should be able to see a small dashboard of the GoToWebinar. In that, at any time, you can ask the question to the speaker at any time of the presentation, and we'll make sure that we will get to your questions during the presentation. And we have a dedicated time at the end of the presentation just for questions and answers, and we'll make sure that we'll get all the questions answered. Sanjeev, can you go to the next slide? And today's speaker is Sanjeev Kumar, and she has extensive experience in SQL Server Administration and all the database technologies. And he'll be talking today about SQL Server 2005 administration. At this point, I would like to hand it over to Sanjeev to talk a little bit more about his experience. Sanjeev?
Yeah, thank you, Madhu. Hello, everyone. Welcome to SQL Server 2005 administration webinar. 1 hour is a short time, but we'll try to cover as much as possible in the next 1 hour. This webinar will provide you a bird's eye view of SQL Server 2005, its architecture, and various editions of SQL Server. We'll also go over the role of a SQL Server DBA and some of the challenges the DBA has. And we'll have like a quick demo of a basic DBA task. Before I go ahead with the presentation, let me give you a brief introduction of who am I, what I do, and what I've been doing all these years. As you all know, my name is Sanjeev Kumar. I work as a senior database administrator, and I have over 12 years of experience in the information technology, and I do have a Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science. And I have expert knowledge on almost all versions of SQL Server. Right now, I manage 2005, I have management 2000. That's a little bit of introduction to it. Let's dive into for today's webinar and see what do we have in SQL Server 2005 and what's our agenda. So what's our agenda for today is we're going to go over to see what is the role of a SQL Server DBA in the current world, and what are the expectations from a SQL Server DBA. What am I supposed to do? Where do we start? Do we write programs? Do we write administration or create databases? The next slides will talk about that. And we'll also see how SQL Server has evolved to today's cutting-edge technology. We'll also go over the architecture of SQL Server 2005. And we'll also compare a SQL Server with other products like Oracle DB2. How is SQL Server 2005 better than the other products? You'll learn a lot of new features and components of SQL Server 2005. And then we'll also see how do I create a database? How do I back up a database? And if I need to do a recovery, how do I do a restore? And we have like a small demo to go over this one. And there is like a what is high availability, what is reporting services, and the next slides will tell us like what reporting services is, what analysis services is. Going to the next slide, which is about had the role of a DBA, and next we go to SQL Server generation. How did SQL Server come to this day, as we speak of 2008, the version SQL Server 2005? How did it evolve? Basically, a decade ago, SQL Server was part of a Sybase, and then around 10 years ago, it separated out what we call as the differentiation from Sybase SQL Server, and that's how it separated out to that's where SQL Server was born, you could say, and it started a new generation, and that we call as the first generation of SQL Server. When the first generation was released, there was nothing much done from the SQL side. It was a feature from Sybase just ported to SQL Server. Then came the real power of SQL Server, you could call, is like SQL Server Generation 2, which we saw versions 7 and version 2000. And all the new features required for ETL, OLAP, and then a huge improvement performance was done. XML support was added to it. Then came the third generation, which is what we call the current generation, is the third generation of SQL Server, which has added features like security, native support for XML, and was the first one to introduce like a data warehouse concept in 2005. Now we see now we know what the versions of SQL Server are. Now we can look at how the SQL Server 2005 is architected. As with any other database, let's say if you have a payroll system, what would you need in a payroll system? You need a database, you need an application to access the database. Okay, the application is developed by an application team. Now you need to have a database. Okay, so now we choose, like, we have SQL Server 2005 as a database. How is it architected? Core engine, the relational database engine, like the tables, stored procedures, and views, everything is saved in the relational database. And the data, and now like you have to transfer data from one database to another database, so you need some kind of services. You would use replication services to transfer data, and then you would notify all your jobs and everything how it has to be done through your notification services. Integration services, analysis services, and reporting services are new in 2005, which basically enhance you for reporting. We go to the next slide, which is talking about SQL Server Edition. Okay, I got to know about the architecture. I know it's a core engine. It's got replication services for transferring. What are the flavors that SQL Server come in? What are the editions of SQL Server 2005? SQL Server 2005 basically comes in 4 editions. One we call an Express edition. One is a workgroup. One is a standard, and the last one is the enterprise. So, how do I choose? What do I need? Let's say if you are learning SQL Server on your own, you want to play around, and if you're a developer, you want to know new features of SQL 2005, then you choose the Express. And the limitations. What are the limitations of Express? It can run only on a 1 CPU. The maximum, it can have 1 GB of RAM, and the maximum database size could be of 4 GB. Then what we see is a workgroup. Workgroup is like a team of 2 people, or maybe up to 2 to 5, where you have like a small application or an intra-department application where you need a small database. Then it basically, the limitations are it can have only 2 CPU, 3 GB RAM, and it has all the tools required in SQL 2005. The real corporate world needs a standard edition or enterprise edition where there is no limit. You can have n number of users. It got all the features in it. Let's say if you're going to join as a DBA in a company, then if somebody comes and asks you what kind of versions I need to buy, you can tell, okay, then you ask them the question, what's your CPU? The 4 CPU, you recommend them standard. If somebody says, no, I don't have a concept, I have money, I can buy whatever hardware I want, then you could recommend enterprise. If it's for an application development team, there is Express, you could go. I people asking a question about notification services. Notification services are, let me take a slide. Let me go back to the previous slide. I see a couple of people asking the same question about the notification services. Notification services is basically, let's say I have a job. I want to know I want to be notified when it's completed. I could set up a database mail, and if you are like a really programmatic, you can send the MSMQ message, and then trap the message. You can send an XML message. This is basically on an event. You can send an event, and the notification services kicks off when it sees an event. You could tell, okay, an Excel file comes in, I need to start a process. So the notification services keep polling for an Excel, and then once it sees an Excel, it kicks off the process. I hope I answered the question the person would ask me. If you still have any questions, we'd be glad to take at the end of the seminar. We went over this packaging. Just to recap where we left off. As I mentioned, like there are 4 editions: Enterprise, Standard, Workgroup, and Express. Express is typically used to play around. It's like a sandbox version. Workgroup is for a company which is like a small company. Standard and Enterprise are the most common SQL 2005 which are used over the Enterprise. And just to reiterate, the major difference between a Standard and the Enterprise is Standard doesn't support database partitioning, whereas Enterprise supports the database partitioning. Except for that, everything else is the same. Now let's go to, now we got the different versions of editions. We saw the architecture. Now let's see how does SQL Server compare to other products. What does it do? Any product, any RDBMS product basically serves 4 basic 4 principles. One is the base product, what we call as a core engine or a database engine, and then is the manageability. How easy can I manage the database? And then the high availability part. And there is, and how I manage through my business intelligence. And if you look at the current slide, I took the example of, I compared SQL Server with Oracle 10G and IBM DB2. You would buy, let's say if you are an Oracle shop, you would buy a core engine, you would buy diagnostic pack for tuning, you would buy a rack for clustering, and then you would buy a BI bundle for warehousing. And typically in the Oracle world, every piece is managed by different experts. So you're talking about, I'm not telling that one person cannot manage it, but on average, company prefers to have 4 DBAs who are maintaining this environment. Similarly, it applies same to the DB2, like it's got a core engine, it's got a performance expert, it's got a recovery expert, and it's got the warehouse too. If you look at SQL Server, when you talk about the SQL Server DBA, SQL Server DBA manages the product since it encompasses all the features in one product, and it's not sold in pieces. Everything is sold as is. We as a DBA will be able to do everything. So if I'm a DBA, so I'm going to manage the core engine. I'm the person responsible for maintaining the OLTP. I'm the person maintaining the high availability, and I am the DBA for data warehouse. So you could see the comparison how SQL Server is easy to manage and how it's more flexible to maintain it compared to other products like Oracle or DB2. Let's go to the next slide. So we talked about the how do we compare with SQL Server editions, what are the options, what is the what do you see there. Now we'll go over the management tools. So what do we have in the management tools? Components and tools. SQL Server 2005 has components like SQL Server Management Studio. This is the heart and soul of a database administration. This tool lets you to connect to any SQL Server, which is local or could be remote, to and maintain it. When I say maintain it, you could do anything like create a database, you could backup, you could set up replication, you could set up log shipping, you can do anything you want as far as the database engine is concerned. Then comes the database engine. Database engine is the core heart of a SQL Server. Database engine, treat it as like, let's say you walk job. Let's assume there is a process which has to be run on a daily basis. Then there is no point for us to run it manually every day. You could set up a job. A job is nothing but like a task or a task which has to be run repeatedly every day. This can be scheduled to run through SQL Server Agent. What is Service Area Manager? Service Area Manager is the where you could manage all the SQL Server configurations. Like, can I enable the database mail? Can I allow DLLs to be accessed in my database? We'll go over it in the demo. I'll show how to choose what does it do. Then the next is a SQL Server Configuration Manager. This basically is to start the services. This is basically replacing people who are familiar with Windows NT services, who are coming from system admin background. It's equivalent to the service component services module in their NT administration, which is made much easier. Now, in 2005, I'm a DBA. I don't have to be Windows NT admin. I can use SQL Server Configuration Manager to start a SQL Server service, stop a SQL Server service. Then the next one is the Business Intelligence Development Studio. This is a 2005 module which lets you build any project. Then comes the Transact SQL. Transact SQL is you're writing your SQL script. Let's say if you want to update a table, you would use a Transact SQL. You could say update table, table name, salary equal to something, where employee ID equal to 100. Basically, Transact SQL is all your select, update, delete, and creating triggers, any SQL command. I hope you guys are getting more knowledge at this point. And any questions, feel free to send us. We'll be glad to we're happy to answer all your questions at the end of the webinar.
Sanjeev?
Yep.
I think you can take this question, I believe. There's one question from the audience which says, can you please give the price comparison for these products?
Okay. I can tell the price comparisons for the product. This usually depends on the way Microsoft works on the licensing is what you call as OEM licensing. It's called based on the volume licensing. Let's say typically the ranges, as I told you, Express is free. Work group runs somewhere between 2000 to 500, and standard runs somewhere between 6,000 to 8,000, and enterprise would be 12,000 to 14,000 based on the number of CPU. Let's take, for example, Express. As I told you, it's free. Workgroup, since it supports only 2 CPU, it would cost you like 2,500. If it is a standard edition, a 4 CPU would cost you 8,000. If it is a 4 CPU enterprise edition, would cost you 12,000. Did I answer the question? Okay. Okay, before we go to the demo, let's see one more time what are the components. As I told, it's a management studio where it lets you the tools. These are the tools to manage SQL Server. Database engine is the heart and soul of SQL Server. Agent is like a scheduler which can be run anytime. Surface area configuration and surface area configuration manager are for tweaking your parameters, and Business Intelligence Studio is your developing the project. Transact SQL is to write all your selects, updates, and deletes. Let's go to the next screen. We have a demo. We have a demo of SQL Server 2005 components and tools. Let's start the demo right now. The way you go to SQL Server 2005 is you go to Start, Programs, go to My SQL Server 2005, and these are the options we get. There's a configuration tools. There is a lot of configuration tools which comes with the SQL Server 2005. Due to the time constraints, we cannot go to every feature. We'll be just exploring Management Studio today, but I want to just give like at least tell you what it does. In the configuration studio, as I told, there is a notification service. There is a SQL Server Configuration Manager, error reporting and usage reporting. People use it who work as partner with Microsoft. Let's say if you are a partner with Microsoft, you could send all your errors directly to Microsoft and they'll respond back to you. Analysis services is you could build a project and deploy it. Then there is performance tools, which comes a part of SQL Server 2005. Database engine tuning advisor. Basically, you could take any query, input it, it recommends and builds a new report for you telling what's the best way to write a query. You don't have to be a developer to do this one. Any novice who is starting as a DBA can do this. You write a query, highlight it, just feed the input to the tuning advisor, you get the results back, and then recommend to developer, okay, this is what you would change. And then there is a management studio where you build all the projects. And then we go to the business intelligence tools. So let's explore the enterprise manager or SQL Server management studio. It's going to take a while to open up. Okay, you would get three options when you open up a management studio. It's going to ask you what kind of service. As I mentioned, like this is a tool required for the DBA to manage any service. Remember going back to the old slides. Like unlike Oracle or DB2 guys, SQL Server DBA manages every services related to Microsoft technology through this one management tool. It lets you, let's say, server type. What kind of server types I have? So from here, you could manage a database engine. You could manage an analysis service engine. You could manage a reporting server database, or even you could manage SQL Server Mobile, or you could manage a integration service. So right now we are interested in managing the database. So we will connect through the database. The server name is my local machine name, so I'm connected to the local database. And authentication is two kinds of authentication you could connect. One is through Windows authentication. The next one is SQL authentication. The recommended one for Microsoft is always Windows authentication. So that's the best practice of Microsoft. But depending on our applications, we can decide what kind of I have before I get into the exploring the management studio, I have a good question. I think it will help all the audience here. The question I have is, when do I choose Oracle, DB2, or SQL Server? It depends actually. The answer is depends. If you are talking about using features, the new features, you want to get into the new technology, and all it depends. The first, there are three parameters which are really depend. Your cost of your server you're going to spend. Second is the time you're going to spend to build application. And third, do I have enough resource, or is it easy to find a good resource? And as I mentioned in my third slide, let's say if we choose an Oracle, then you need to plan to have at least 3 DBAs to maintain database apart from the Unix administrator. If you are in DB2, you need to know like a guy who is AS400. But if you are a SQL, the person manages everything. And on top of it, if you are using .NET, it's usually compatible with they recommend SQL Server. If you are Java based, they usually recommend Oracle. And if you are on a green screen, or if you are using mainframes, or if you are using DB2 kicks, then you are better off using DB2. It depends on what your environment is. If you are using JD Edwards, or if you are using PeopleSoft, people recommend to use Oracle or DB2. If you are talking about an OLTP application, like it's a web-based application, it's a payroll, it's an internet, it's a small project to be turned around like in 2 months with a little number of resources. That's how people are right now. Every company is running like really tight on budget. Everybody is monitored, and everybody wants to be turned around real quick. And if you're looking for a solution, quick solution, reliable, scalable, then I would recommend SQL Server. But as I said, it depends on your need. It depends on you how much you're ready to spend the cost, and it depends on how many resources you're ready to hire, and it depends how much time you spend to develop it. But I personally have been recommending everybody to SQL. In fact, right now I am converting an Oracle OLTP to a SQL Server 2005. We are actually converting Oracle data warehouse to SQL Server 2005 data warehouse. And I'm very happy to see like how SQL Server has improved in the past years. It's amazing. It's amazing with all these new tools and new features, especially setting up disaster recovery. I don't have to be a Unix admin to manage like a SQL Server. I do everything through the management studio. I know NT, but I'm not a guru in NT, but I still do everything, whatever is needed by SQL Server. I hope I answered the question asked by the audience. Okay, let's get back to the management studio. Whenever we connect to a SQL Server database engine, the first screen you see is this. So, okay, what is this screen? What are these? Okay, let's see one by one to see what it is. As I told you, I connected a server called LFLR, that's my server name. And it's got a few components in it. It's got a database component in it. It's got a security component in it. It's got a server objects, a replication, management, notification services, SQL Server agent. We're going to just touch briefly on each of them, as each of them itself is like a huge subject on its own. And then and on top, what do we have in the top here? File. You could connect an explorer, and there are different ways you could view it. I could say view my object explorer. I could say view the summary. That's the summary you're seeing on the right hand side. And then the next one is I could say show me my template explorer. It's going to show you template explorer. It's going to show you template explorers to help you build. Let's say if I want to build up a backup solution, I'll click here. It shows me how to create. I can pick a template from here. If I want to create a database, it's going to show me. These are all built in 2005. It will show me these are the different ways of how do you connect a database, create a database. And there is next one more option is I want to create a default. How do I create a default? These are just a bunch of options you could use. And this is like a template explorer. You could use it whenever needed. And then whatever features you saw on the programs menu, you would see it again here. You would see a SQL Server profiler to trace. People who are familiar with Oracle, this is equivalent to a GUI-based explain plan. And then you could take the output of that explain plan or the result and feed it to the database engine tuning advisor, get the results, and then tune the query. We're not going to deep into that. So we're just going to create a database now. Databases. Then there is security. Security basically lets you create a new login. What the new login does is how do I give access to create and what kind of access permission does it need. We'll see in the demo now. And there are replication, you want to set up replication, and there is SQL Server agent. This lets you create a job. And as there is notification services, it's not installed on this machine, but when it's on the server, typically you would see notification services enabled. Okay, SQL Server 2005, they made like a major improvement. People who are familiar with SQL Server 2000, you would see all the master database, all the system databases and the user databases bundled in one. Now they're separated out. So if you look at it here, it's called the master, model, MSDB, and TempDB. These are system databases. They are created when SQL Server is installed. We don't have to manage anything on this one because these are the configuration files for the SQL Server to run efficiently. So what's a database snapshot? Database snapshot is a tool where you could use to clone a database. When I say clone a database, it doesn't just copy the schema, it copies the data too. So you could have up to 256 snapshot of one database. And at any given point of time, you could make snapshots are usually read-only. You could make it read-write if needed. Let's go ahead and create a database now. How do I create a database? The way to create a database is you go to databases here and then say right-click and then click on new database. And this would bring up like a screen giving you, asking for a few information. So what do you want call as a database? Let's assume this. You work as a DBA and you work in a big organization. Let's say you one of your CEO comes in and says, okay, I'm going to start like a new department now where there are few employees who are going to join, and we're going to add in like, we're going to update some employee information. So can you please create a database? I'd say, okay, let me create a database. Let's assume that's a request you got. You're going to create a database for a request from your CEO for one of your payroll department. So since it's a payroll department database, we will call it as payroll underscore, let's call it as department 20, because let's assume that there are already 19 departments. This is the 20th department they are starting. So let's call it as payroll underscore department 20. When you have when you create a database, there are two requirements for database to be created. One is a physical name, which will be called as a data file, and then one we need what we call as a log file. What's a data file? Data file is the one which holds the data, and log file holds all the transactional data. So right now we are trying to create a database. So let's see what are the options. So when you create database, it's going to pop up into, it's going to fill up by default. But the initial size is 2 MB, that's a default. The log initial file is 1 MB, that's default. And if you look at the auto growth here, it's by 1 MB, unrestricted growth, and the log is set to 10% unrestricted growth. What does it mean by that? So let's see what do we mean by that. What it means is you're telling, let's say if you create a database with 2 MB, and if somebody comes and inserts data more than 2 MB, then what we're telling is here, enable the growth, don't stop the database, don't kill the database, grow it by 1 MB and up to maximum file of unrestricted. Unrestricted file growth is equivalent to how much of a disk space you have on the server. If you have 1 terabyte, it's going to grow up to 1 terabyte. That's what it means by auto growth. When you say percentages, it takes, now for the log, we are telling it to grow by 10%. What it means by 10% is if the initial size is 1 MB, if it needs to grow, you're telling the database, okay, grow, whenever there is a need to grow it by 10%. That let's say after 1 MB, it's going to go to 1.1. And we are specifying maximum file size is unrestricted file growth. This is also equivalent saying that grow as long as you have space on the disk drive. Okay, and then next we go to the options, and these are some default options which come in SQL Server. You could choose recovery model. What kind of recovery model it comes in three models. One is full, one is bulk, and one is simple. And then these are all the database flags for the current database we are creating. Is it read only? No, I want it to read and write. There are like a lot of other parameters, like based on the requirement, you could change it. So now we got the database here, which says payroll underscore department. Let's create it. Okay, we saw the payroll. Now you can see that the database is created. Okay, now the CEO has come and told to us that, okay, have a database and he has some data to be inserted. There are a few employees. So what I did for the purpose of demo is I've created a script to create a table, and then from there it inserts the data while this is pulling up, and this basically inserts few of the employee. I have a SQL called employee. Okay, basically what I'm trying to do is I'm going to create the table and I'm going to insert the rows. Okay, so here's the table. So I'm creating a table called employee ID, and I have employee, and I have like 5 columns in it. An employee ID, and I have a department, I have a first name, I have a last name, and I have salary. So let me go ahead and create a database. I'm connected to master. I have to go back and connect to the department database. That's where I want to connect. successfully. What it means is like it was able to create the table. So now let's go ahead and insert few rows. These are some test rows with employee IDs. Some belong to marketing, some belong to information technology, and some belong to human resources. So let's go ahead. Now we have inserted the data, and this is what we have in our table right now. This is as simple as using this in our creating the table and inserting the tools. Any questions regarding the Management Studio? Please feel free to send us.
Sanjeev, yeah, actually there is a couple of questions. Question is it a good idea to create a separate database if I need to create 10 to 15 tables? And can I link the external disk to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question is, let me repeat the question for the rest of the audience. Is it a good idea to create a separate database if I need to create 10, 15 tables? Depends on the need of the business, but typically if the function of the database is, when I say function of these tables are functionally same. My example was, let's say if you're going to create 10 tables which are related to the payroll department or a human resource. If they are business-wise, if they are serving the same thing, then the answer is no. If it is a new function by itself, then yes. Then what do? If you want to create a 15 tables, but the function is same, then you would use something called file groups concept. File groups is, let's say if we had 15 tables, what we'll have to do is, like here, you go to file groups, and by default it comes with 1. You could say go add, and you could give a name here. I'll say just it's a salary. You want to maybe has a table called salary, and you want to create on a separate one. So I could say add here, and then since I have anything here, so this would be, salary would be the file group for him, and the table would be created out of this one. Did I answer the question or no? Okay, let me recap the question one more time. If we have 15 tables related to the same business function, then you would choose a file group concept. If these 15 tables are for a separate process, like a bad job or to a non-related function, then you would create a database for it. Any more questions? And
there was one more question actually.
I'm looking at it. There's one more question. Is like, can I link an external disk to it? You can link external disk to it, but it's not recommended. You could actually create a database on an external disk. External disk, I'm assuming that's like a USB drive. It's an external disk for me, if that's what it meant. But if you're talking about SAN, yes, you can definitely attach a SAN attached. That's as long as it's on a fiber or on an iSCSI, you could definitely attach an external disk to it. But if you're talking about USB, you can create it, but you'll not get best performance. I wouldn't recommend it on a production. Maybe on a QA or a development if you are running out of space. And this is a good point actually. You could actually create a database on a file share. Your physical files, the database will be created here, the payroll department 20. This is basically created on a local disk. You could in fact, let's say if you have zero space on the server and somebody has to create a database, what do? You could in fact create the drive on a network, which is your file share or any share. But the only impact is going to be like you're going to be hit on the performance side. If you don't care for performance, if it was just restoring, if it was pulling up some data which was messed up, if you want to just see if I'm able to restore it, yes, definitely you could restore it to an external disk. You could restore it to a network drive. Yeah, and I think I see the user saying it's a USB drive. Yes, USB is the answer. You could do that. You could back up and restore. But as I mentioned earlier, this is definitely not recommended on your production system. USBs are sometimes hard to, as you know, like USBs are slower in reading and slower in writing. And since this is not a text file, your reads are going to be much slower, and as well as your writes are going to be slower. If your text file, like if you're saving your Word document, you don't see much differences. But when you talk about a database, it's a metadata in it. It has got encrypted stuff. It's got the cap file. It has to unzip those, read those. So, and it's got a lot of other security features. That's why it's going to take a while for you if you are connected to a USB. Okay, so now if there are no more questions, let's continue with our next slide. We got a quick overview of like what a management studio is. So like basically as a DBA, you would see this screen every day. This is what we do every day. Like you come to work, you open up the management studio because this is one central place where you could manage any service and any database, any login to manage whatever we have to do and whatever the job asks for. Let's continue with the next slide. Okay, we got the overview of how the management studio, what can be managed from there, and then we went ahead and the slide, the database was created, and we even created the table, and we saw like when we inserted like few rows. Okay, now that's good. And as per the CEO's recommendation, you tell him that you called him and said, okay, sir, you had asked me for creating a database. That was fast enough. It took me like just 5 minutes to create a database, and as per your request, I've created the table called employees, and I've inserted all the rows you had sent me. And then you as a DBA, every time you create a database, we need to have a backup recovery strategy. Now, what kind of backup recovery strategy we have? How does SQL Server work? If you remember my previous slide, when we created the database, we had three options. One is a full, one is a bulk log, and one was the log. So the model full helps you recover to the point. A differential backup needs a full backup. So basically, a backup can be done in three. You could perform a full backup. If full backup is equivalent to backing up the full database, including all the objects and all the data. Log backup. When you do a log backup, you would back up just the transactions, whatever happened in that 1 hour or whenever the job was scheduled. Then there is a third kind of backup, which is called a differential backup. A differential backup, what it does is it's equivalent to a full backup, but it just copies the difference of when was the full backup done. So now we know like there are three models. So what should be my strategy? SQL Server says, okay, you have a full backup. Yeah, I know that it does the full backup, but you don't have time to back up time because the maintenance window is 1 hour or 2 hours, depending on your business. And then they say you could back up log. That means you could back up transactions. And then they say, okay, we can give you every 1 hour to back up whatever thing you have to back up. Then how do you build a strategy to make sure that at any point of failure, we as a DBA, how do we get all the data back online? So typically, everybody, this is the industry standard. This is what I recommend people to use, is use this strategy, use this backup strategy, what you're seeing on the slide. The strategy is run a full backup, full database backup. What I meant was a full database backup weekly. Let's say you run a full backup on a Sunday. Then you run a differential backup from Monday to Saturday. So what it does is like you have a good, what we call as a golden copy on a Sunday, and then Monday through Saturday, every night you run a differential backup that copies all the changes. So now you're covered for like every day, had, you as a DBA, you have all the backups set in place. What you do is like you take a Sunday's backup, restore it. You take Monday night's differential backup, restore it. You take Tuesday night's differential backup, restore it. So now you're back as of Tuesday night. Then apply all the transaction logs up to 12 p.m. Wednesday. So now you're back online without losing any data. So this backup strategy is usually industry recommended. Most of the people use it. People who have the luxury of running a full database backup, they run it every day. People who have a luxury of running differential, some people run once a month full backup, a weekly differential, and daily transaction. It totally depends on what kind of business you are into, and plus what kind of maintenance window are they giving it to you. Because when you run the backup on a system, the system doesn't have to be down, but it's usually slow. And typically we recommend like there is no activity, but we cannot with this 24/7 web applications and people accessing data, getting a downtime is really hard. So it depends on what kind of business people are in. But typically this is the standard most of the people use, like a weekly full backup and the differential daily backups and log backup for every 30 minutes. And that's what I meant. Here in the next slide, restore strategy would be restore from your full database backup, restore all of your differential backup, and restore all of your transaction log backup. And then let's look at a demo, see how do we backup and do a restore. For this backup, I just wanted to go back to this slide, this query, which I had shown in the earlier slide. We had created the table, and we had inserted the rows, inserted few records, and then let's see if the records are still there. Yes, they are still there, right? I see like 1,004 employee accounting. Robert Stone has a salary of 160. Dave has 150. Alex has 130. John has 120. And Julio has 75,000. So we have this, and then as part of our backup job, we are running the backup. So the way you do backup is you click on the database, right click on the database, go to task, and then click on backup. So when you do the backup, we want to do prompts for few options. You could say what database you want to backup. I want to backup payroll department 20. Then what type of backup you want. It's going to prompt you for three options. You want to backup a full, a differential, or a transactional. I'd like to have a full backup because this is the first time I've created a database, so I want to have a full backup. And I know there is no activity happening on this box. And then here I could tell where I want to backup. It's going to ask me for a file name. Where do you want me to backup? I want to save my backup file on my project help. I'm going to say my project help, and I'm going to call it as payroll .bak. BAK is a standard naming convention for the backup file. TRN is a naming convention for transaction log backups. So I want to backup the database now. So you selected the path. This is where you want to save this is the folder you want to save a backup file, and this is what you want to call. Okay, so now you come here, hit OK, and it says the backup is completed. Let's make sure that the backup file is existing. So I'd save my file and see my project help, and let's see if we have the file there. Okay, I see my file there. That means my backup has run successfully. It's good. So it's good. You're all happy. You're going home. It's on a weekend. You want to spend time with the family, and all of a sudden, CEO who is playing golf on a Saturday evening thinks, "Oh my God!" And somebody sent a report to him, and he sees, "Oh my God! I see that all the guys in accounting are making 160K, and the information technology guys are making 150 and 130K. And the marketing guys KPIs of 120. And the human resource guy, Julio, he's making just 75K. Oh, that's bad. So he initiates, Julio is his friend, I don't know, whoever it is, he decides to give him a raise, and he says, okay, from this coming payroll, I'm going to give Julio a raise of 25,000. I want to make him 100,000. So he sends a request to the application developer, and application developer writes like, since it's one update, he says, okay, why do I spend time? It's a weekend. Why do I spend time writing an application? Let me go ahead and update the query through a query. Then he says, okay, since the employee ID for Julio is 1002, he says, okay, I'm going to say update employee, set salary equal to 100,000, where employee ID equal to 1002. And that's the right query because he wants to update just Julio's salary to 100,000, and he wants to keep everybody same thing. But he's in a rush, so what happens is he's logged in from home, he had a bad day, whatever reason he had. And the way it works in SQL is you can highlight the query, you can run it. Instead of choosing the query, he just ran update employee, set salary equal to 100,000. And then he called, and then he said, okay, update is done and all the stuff. Then the CEO runs a report again. What does he see now? Oh my God, he says the programmer has updated wrong. He changed everybody's salary to 100,000 now. So what do we do now? We got the payroll coming pretty soon. So what does he say? He calls the DBA team and says, okay, what's the best we can do? You as a DBA just need the backup. And I said, okay, don't worry about it. We'll get you the restore back. It's not a big deal for us. We just finished it. So he's going to say, okay, so get me the data as soon as possible. Otherwise, everybody's pay is going to go down. So you as a DBA now, come back. You have the full latest backup. So what you do is, now is our job to make sure that everybody is waiting on you. So it becomes a critical that our backups are. And this is where your strategy comes in. Depends on where and what time it was updated. So now you have the database. Now you're going to say the way you do restore is you say restore database, and you want to restore from. It's already picked up the location for you. Or you could choose from device, and you could browse. And my backup file was here on payroll.back. And hit OK. Choose the backup file you want, and you want to overwrite the existing one, and you hit OK. And the database is restored. And then you come back here, and then we type in select star from employee. All right. Now we are back to the old salaries where so now we are back to old one where the salary was. Now let's call the programmer again. We'll make sure that he runs the query in the right way. And let's pick just the update from him, what he wants to update. And now we tell the programmer to be sure that he runs the right query this time and don't mess the database. So we run the employee ID and he runs it in the right way. And then look at it now. Okay, Mr. Julio has got his salary now, 100%. So everybody is happy, and you as a DBA, will be able to we were able to restore it. And this is like this is one of the options, very easy option. You could run a restore, and where you could tell it's an easy thing to do a restore. This is a little bit under a lot of options. It needs in-depth with the different ways to backup and restore. But this is just wanted to give an overview how it can be done. And I see a question coming in from one of the audience. Can we do our tuning of SPs? The answer is yes. You could do tuning of SPs. SPs is a stored procedure, or people who are familiar with Oracle, it's equivalent to your PL SQL. answered the question for the tuning for SP. So we are able to restore the database. That's good. Everybody's happy. Everybody went home. But the concept I wanted to show was it's easy to manage, unlike Oracle or SQL, Oracle or DB2, where you'd have to get the system down, give a server, can't override, go through like a bunch of RMAN steps. Here it's like easy as right-clicking and restoring it. So we were able to restore the database. Now let's see what do we have in the next slide. Next thing we have is high availability. What is high availability? We'll look into the next slides. We'll tell you like a brief overview because everything here is like everything here. Hello. Everything here is like a big topic by itself. So I want to just give an overview of a little bit of clustering and replication, log skipping, and database mirroring. So what's SQL 2005 clustering? Let's say in this world of like high availability, what do you mean by high availability? Let's say you go to the bank and you have a check of $5,000. Maybe you got a bonus. You deposit it, and then but you want to draw 2,000 from that. So what you do is like you deposit 5,000, and all of a sudden when the bank teller is going to withdraw the money, the server dies, and she cannot give back the money. That's a bad situation for you. It's a bad situation for the bank itself. So then what happens is like, let's say the clustering, the way it works is there are two servers, server A and server B, and there is one common database which both the server access to it. Let's say if you go ahead and deposit, server A is online and is trying to deposit, and while you are ready to withdraw, the server crashes. Automatically with the clustering solution, server A fades over to server B, and now server B is active server. So you as a customer are happy because even if the server goes down, you won't see a difference. Deposit your money, you got your money back. So whatever money you wanted. So the transactions went through. The concept of clustering is to make sure that none of the transactions stopped because of database error or because of network error or because of any error, because everything is clustered. So one fails over, the other thing is carried over. Even the database, I just showed one diagram here, but internally it's got like a lot of settings where if this database fails over, it's going to bring up another database. So basically the goal of clustering of high availability is to make sure that the transaction goes through. The next one is this works if everything is local. What if your servers are in different locations? Let's say you are in New York and you go to the bank and deposit it, but you don't want to draw money, but your wife wants to draw money sitting in Atlanta. So how does it happen? A bank in Atlanta to connect to your machine because it's connected to local servers in Atlanta. So what do? You live in New York, you deposit your money, and then deposited information, your information, everything replicates to the database server in Atlanta. And then whoever is drawing there, they could see that they could get the money there. And it works vice versa. It works both the way. If somebody has a transaction, just to talk about like F principle, if a transaction is saved, if a transaction happened on a server A in New York, all the changes related to this transaction goes to server B, and any transaction which has happened in server B will come back to server A. That's the concept of SQL Server 2005 replication. And then we go to what we call as Business Intelligence Management Studio. Business Intelligence Management Studio, basically what it is like, it will help you build projects like integration service project, analysis service project. It helps you import data into the SQL Server, or it will help you export the data to an external source. Okay, I see like a good question coming on the previous slide, which said, what's the limit? Okay, let me repeat the question. What are the time limits for the replication is the question, and it's a very good question. The time limits or replication depends totally on your network bandwidth. Whatever your network As far as SQL is concerned, once it sends a transaction, its job is done. Whatever the time which is taken through the pipe, that's the time, that's the latency you can tell. I think I answered the question for the replication. Okay, going back, we talked about these integration services. We talked about this one. Then what is analysis services? Analysis services is basically storing multi-dimensional data, and the data can be pivoted through the Microsoft Excel. This is basically used for database mining. Then we have reporting services, which is used to report for all the transactions, whatever happened for that day, that month, or that year. And then another key concept we have, or a key role, you could say, for database administration is to check, monitor the activity of SQL Server. How do I maintain the health of a SQL Server system? How do I maintain it to run optimally, to run at the speed I think is correct, or I want to maintain? How do you maintain it? So the things are like, how do you identify the problem with activity check through activity monitor. There are like new DMVs, what we call as dynamic management objects or dynamic management views, and then through that you could monitor the performance. And there are something called performance dashboards. I wanted to show if I can. Performance dashboards is something I'm not going to run anything because I don't have anything right now, but the performance dashboard is, you could see, I could run what was my disk usage, what are my active transaction, how do I run that, what else do I see. So this is basically, I just ran one report for the disk usage. It's going to show me what's the index located, what's unallocated, unused. You could run this. These are all what we call as a performance dashboard. And there are a lot of other reports. What's the blocking transaction? Which is the object which is taking the top 10? You could say, who changed my schema? If alter table, who changed it? You could say index usage. You could tell what are the tables which are using index, which are not using it. These are all built in 2005, and these are usually covered in the performance tuning webinars. Okay, and then this is what I meant by deploying the performance dashboard. And then there's a tool Microsoft. It says like analyze SQL is the standard tool which Microsoft sends it. Analyzing trends with SQL Server health and history tools, what we call as SQL H2. That's a pretty good tool. A lot of people use it. And there's something called SQL Nexus. People use that too. There is a IO stress from Intel. That's for checking the IO. Then to conclude, I'll have to say that Microsoft SQL Server 2005 is the new generation data management and analytic platform. As a core component of Microsoft Windows Server system, it dramatically reduces the time to bring e-commerce and all the other businesses. And it's got a really close integration with Visual Studio and Microsoft development tools. Okay. So the question is, we heard about I have a question regarding replication. We will get back to it once we will take this question at the end of the webinar. Okay, getting back to career path. You heard about these tools. You saw what architecture is, how it is integrated. When do you compare with other products? How SQL Server and how other products need many DBA. And you as a SQL Server DBA will know everything to manage, like right from warehouse, like writing integration services, managing databases, setting up replication, doing everything as one person. So you can say at this point you heard about all these things. Now it's time to decide. I heard about the seminar, looks good. It's got all the new features in it. Where do I go from here is the question. Guess most of you have it. I got all these new features, looks good. Where do I go from here? If you want to manage a database, you want to be restoring, doing backup recovery, doing basic DBA tasks, creating login, then I would recommend to take a database administrator task. And if you are a developer or a everything is so simple. To be able to apply for a job as a database administrator, you might have to spend probably 25 hours of course to get fully trained and apply for a new job. And same applies for your SSIS, integration services, reporting services, maybe 25 to 30 hours. Then you will be hands-on experience and you'll be ready to apply a job. A database administrator, can definitely tell it's going to take exactly maximum of 25 to maybe 30 max 30, and you will be able to do everything which everybody is asking right now in the market, like backup, restore, creating login, setting up clustering, installing SQL Server 2005, all the new features which everybody is looking for. Then, as I mentioned, you have three paths from here. You could be a database administrator, you could take the path of BI developer, or you could be SQL programmer. And then, what are my upcoming webinars? There are a few interesting webinars which are coming up. One is the one webinar is installing and upgrading SQL Server 2005. The next one is backup restore strategies. And then the next one is overview of everything like replication, log shipping, and database mirroring. And then the last one, not the least, is the introduction to SSIS. As always, if you have any questions, please, you can also email your questions, your technical questions, or any training questions at support@myprojecthelp.com. Again, all training course schedules, your technical questions, any questions you have on SQL Server, feel free to email us at support@myprojecthelp.com. And thank you very much for the time. I hope you guys have had got a good overview of the product, and I think I have made it very clear how easy it is to manage SQL Server, how easy is it to learn, and I hope you had good 1 hour session. You guys have a good weekend. Enjoy your rest of the Sunday and enjoy your Super Bowl.
Thank you, Sanjeev. That was an excellent overview of the SQL Server 2005 administration. I hope the audience liked it too. Like all of you know and learned that SQL Server can do a lot of wonders for yourself and for your company. And like Sanjeev was mentioning, that it's not hard to learn SQL Server 2005, and we would make it more easier for you by providing you with hands-on training, and if you could attend the upcoming webinars. For all those schedules, please feel free to go to www.myprojecthelp.com or just send us an email to support@myprojecthelp.com. We will be more than happy to answer all of your questions. And while I was talking, I think a couple of questions popped up. I know we were 10 to 15 minutes past the time, but we don't want to leave all of you without answering all of your questions. I think a couple of questions, Sanjeev, for you. It's reading from a file or from a table, which is fast.
Yeah, SQL Server just supports table-to-table replication. File is like a snapshot. When you use a file replication, it has to be overwrite of everything. File replication cannot be at a transactional level. It will replicate the entire table. Let's say if you have a table with 10 records today, and it replicates at the file level, it replicates those 10. So if you add 5 more, instead of replicating the 5, it will replicate the 15 one more time. So you have an extra overhead in a file in SQL environment as compared to the table replication. Table replication is based just on the transaction, based on it's an insert, update, or a delete. It is triggered off a DML command. It's based on DML replication. Whereas file replication is a complete table replication.
Okay. And one more question was, does SQL Server 2005 has features of a data warehouse product?
Yes, it has all the data warehouse products, especially for building a warehouse. It's got everything built in, but when as per the the reporting aspect is concerned, you will have to use reporting services to report the data, or you could use ProClarity, which is a new product from Microsoft. It doesn't have reporting, has to be done through reporting services. Data warehouse by itself lets you build a data warehouse, a warehouse and a data mart. But to access the data, it has to be through one of the tools, which is usually reporting services.
Cool. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming, and I think I would like to thank. Okay, I think one more question. Sorry about that. It says, Sanjeev, what is the difference between data warehouse and data center?
Yeah, data warehouse is a database. Data center is a physical location. So let me give you a major difference. I know a lot of people have confusion with this data warehouse and data center. The concept is data warehouse is like a database. This could be my, if you look at my screen, if somebody's looking at it, this could be my data warehouse database. Data center is a physical office location where you have all the servers, all the routers, and there are physical people sitting there monitoring. There are monitoring tools. It's a physical location. It doesn't reside on any of the system. I could have like 10 servers, 10 switches, 10 keyboards, and 10 monitors. These combined together will be my data center. It's an office location. Data warehouse is your history of transactions for the past 5, 10, 15 years in a database. That's a major difference between a data warehouse and a data center. Data center is actually a physical location like our office. Like I have my own desk. I have like people sitting around me. Same thing with data center. Data center has servers, and it's got its own monitor, it's got its own keyboard, and people have a data center because it has to be, all the servers have to be running under like certain temperature. It has to be like, I don't know the exact temperature it has to be. It has to be under certain temperature. That's why you see in most of the companies, data center is always a separate location, and then in a separate room where the temperature is lower. So they are totally different. Data warehouse is a database holding information about your customer or about your transactions. Data center is an office location where you have physically servers are located, or so servers and printers and everything is located there. That's a major difference between those two.
Cool. Thank you, Sanjeev. That was really a clear explanation between the difference between data warehouse and data center. And I thank you for your patience, Sanjeev, and thank all of you also for your patience and hanging in there for an extra few minutes. And I take this opportunity to thank you all. And again, please write to us at support@myemployerhealth.com for any training or any upcoming webinar or any technical questions related to SQL. Our professionals would be more than happy to help you out. Once again, thank you all, and I hope we will be seeing all of you in the future webinars. Thank you, Sanjeev, and thank you all.